Hello everybody, and I hope your garden is growing well. I'm Meg Jordan with the Garden Box to Table project, and my business is Restore Earth Connections. And I'm here to introduce you to some plants that you're going to be receiving or have received, and also just to get you thinking about how your garden is growing. So I hope you've gotten some seeds germinating and you can see some lettuce maybe growing. Maybe your beets are up, maybe a few weeds are up, and hopefully you can identify those for the ones I introduced you to. There's some weeds that are going to be very nutritious, like the lamb's quarters and the chickweed. And maybe you have carrots. The carrots are the slow growing and they need to be kept evenly moist. So if you let them dry out, you might have to reseed. And I just want to let everybody know that I know that you just got a small amount of lettuce seeds and carrot seeds, and we do have extras. So don't be worried. You'll be able to plant some more, and if you need more, please let Ted or myself know. So here we go with, this is one of the kinds of tomatoes. I'm going to come up close because get us a picture of this leaf. It's a very unusual leaf for a tomato. It's known as a potato leaf, even though this is a tomato plant. And this one is called Stupis. And I've grown this one out. I actually saved seeds and started this from my own seeds. It's in a paper pot, as you recognize. And so I'm going to be getting into later how exactly to plant that, but that's one of them. And then we have a Siletz tomato. And I realized I didn't have one of those right here. So Siletz is the other variety of a medium-sized tomato that you're going to get. So you're going to get one of either of those. Then you're going to also receive either a Matt's Wild Cherry tomato. This is a cherry-sized tomato. That one. Or you'll get a Gold Nugget tomato. So those are the options. You'll get one cherry and one of the medium size. And then for cucumbers, you're going to get an Excelsior cucumber or a homemade pickle cucumber. So those are the options. You get 2 tomatoes and 2 cucumbers, or you have received them already. Okay, now let's think about a really important concept at this time of year with these plants. These are tender. They're known as tender annuals because they're really picky about temperature. They love the heat, and last night it got down to 5 degrees, and we're in a greenhouse and it was much nicer in here, so the plants were protected a bit, but outdoors it was quite chilly. So the cucumbers and the tomatoes can't go from even the greenhouse directly into your garden. So when you get them, you can't just suddenly plant them. You're going to have to do something called hardening off. That's a very strange term, not used in everyday language, and it's a process really over time, over about a week, where you get the plants, these tender plants, used to being outside. So right now there's a breeze outside, and the greenhouse is protecting these plants from getting blown around. And especially when you're looking at your tomatoes, they're going to blow around a bit, but their stalks are pretty sturdy. Even in the greenhouse they've been getting some breezes, but the hardening off process means that you get the plants, you set them in a not a full sun, not your hottest sunny spot, but outside, if you have a spot, and put them out in the daytime, and then bring them in at night, and do that process. And if you're away from during the day, if you're away from home, if you can make sure that your plants are not going to be like drying out. So they need to be in a tray of some kind that will hold water, and then you can water them from the bottom because their roots are going down into through the soil, and they're getting stronger. So like this plant, you can see some roots coming out through the pot there. And some of the plants that you get, you might see some roots coming out. And so they are going to need to not dry out. But they do need to get used to a little bit of dryness, so they don't have to be kept constantly wet. They need to experience it a little bit of dryness, because when they're in the garden, just like your other plants that you've put in, you water if it hasn't rained, but you don't keep them wet all the time. So the hardening off is a process of adjustment. So plants are adjusting to real life in the outdoors, and getting ready to join your other plants in the garden. So you can Google it too to find out some more information if you want to, but that it's generally a process of getting them used to it. So that's a really important part of this. That's why I waited to give you these plants, because otherwise you would have had to hold on to those plants for a whole month until you could get them ready to plant, because they needed to grow more, and they really need the warmer temperatures. Now, I've heard that we're going to have January, and so it might not warm up a lot, but you can, over the course of a week from when you get your plants, start getting them used to being outside, and then a couple of days before you expect to plant them, and if you plant them on a cloudy day, that's perfect, or in the evening, plant them. So a couple of days before you plant them, the last stage of hardening off is having them have a sleepover outside, and so they get to spend the night outside, and then you're going to check them in the morning. I know I do with plants. How do they do? And see that they're okay, and hopefully, and then they get to spend the whole 24 hours, 48 hours outside, and water them as needed, and then plant them out. And as I said, the evening is a good time to plant out, because then they get time to settle their roots before they're hit with the sun and having to think about, you know, which part do they focus on, their roots or their growing. So that's good to know. Okay, now how do you plant a tomato? So tomatoes are fascinating. So here's the Matt's Wild Cherry. I'm going to take its little label out. Most of yours are written on the paper pot or have tape on with the name. So this plant, you can see it has a growth all along here. So I'm going to do something like you'd probably think was crazy, but I'm pinching off all the growth that's down low. Pinch, pinch, pinch. So now it looks a little bit like, oh, what's happening with this plant? So the reason, oh, and there's a tiny, tiny little piece going in there. I'm going to pinch that off too. So because tomatoes can be planted up to here. You could take some more leaves off, but they can be planted deeply, because I want to see, Ted, if we can get the hairs. There's really fine hairs along the stem. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so those are all going to become roots if they're in the ground. It's an amazing property of tomatoes, and peppers can do this. You can plant them deeply. And so if you have a pot like this, you're going to take it out, and you see the roots at the bottom. You're going to pinch it like this and squeeze it out. And you see I'm supporting the stem by my fingers there. And then this is all roots. This is the roots of this tomato. So we're going to go like this a little. We're going to ease it. We're going to just pinch apart so that those roots know that they have room to expand now. But we're not going to rip it up or cut it up. Just loosen it a bit. So then they're going to be able to go in. And then we're going to plant it deeply, you know, above the soil of where the pot was. Oh, you know, about that much. Now, a really important thing after it's in the ground is this lower leaf, and maybe even this lower leaf, is going to suddenly be touching the ground. You never want tomato leaves to touch the ground. It's very important, because in our area, there is blight in the soil. It just is. It's because we have such lovely moist conditions a lot of the time. And so toward the end of the season, you might have heard of late blight. And so if tomato leaves are touching the ground, even in their early time, then they can get the blight into their leaves, and then it draws up into the plant. And that's where you have the terrible loss of the plant and the fruit of the plant, and don't want that to happen. So, and the varieties I've given you are early ripening, so that should keep that at bay as long as you take good care of them. So get it in the ground, probably take off the lower two leaves, and then you'll just have this much, but then it's going to keep growing up. All right, so I want to show you, these are I'm sharing this greenhouse with two other farmers, and the Full Hearth Farm has their tomatoes planted, and their tomatoes are giant. And you can see that they have taken the leaves off all the way down, and they've planted it. I mean, it was planted in this deep already, and then they took the leaves off so that they wouldn't touch the ground, and they keep on pruning their tomatoes. Tomatoes actually need pruning. It's very strange, but they do. So you'll find that out too. So another thing that you want to look for is that there's growth that happens right here between the leaf and the stem, and you want to pinch that out. I'll see if I can show you one. And you can see here where they've pinched out before, but they've pinched that little growth out there. So all along, because what you want to do is grow tomatoes, right? You don't want to grow leaves of tomato plant. And so you can see how vigorous these tomato leaves are. And this is also a potato leaf. This is a different kind. This is a Brandywine. So a couple of varieties of tomatoes have the potato leaf, I mean. And yeah, so, and you can see also that this is being suspended from a string, so that the tomato is going to grow up and is woven. There's a clip on there, and it's going to be woven around. So I'll talk to you about supporting your tomatoes in a little bit. Yeah, so that's important. That shows you that, yes, this funny looking, like a lower haircut on the tomato is the usual thing, and that's the way farmers do it too. So okay, so now to planting cucumbers. So the cucumbers you get are going to be small. They're still young, but they're going to grow pretty fast. And then I'll show you how ZG Farm is doing their cucumbers. And so the cucumber, here you can see the cucumber sends out a little grabber to grab hold of something. It's going to grab hold of whatever's available. So in this case, it's a string. And so this is going to hold the cucumber itself. It's like its own little clip. And it's going to climb. Cucumbers are climbers. And so they are going to need some support too. And what you'll need to do is help to direct your cucumber. So this one over here, I just wove it. It was like this, and so I wove it around the string. And then it's going to be able to grab hold. It's going to figure out where to grab there, and it will even grab onto itself. There, I'm directing it a bit. And once, you still have to keep weaving them a bit through the season, but then they're off the ground and you're growing vertical. That's a really important thing in small spaces. I mean, here in the greenhouse, the farmers don't want to have their cucumbers sprawling all over the ground because they could get stepped on. They might get too wet because this is drip irrigation. But to go up, they're using the vertical space, and that's what you're going to be doing in your garden box, because it is small space gardening. And so for the supports that you're going to use, you don't have the fancy thing of a frame, and you'll have 2 cucumbers and 2 tomatoes, and so you're going to be putting in some stakes, some long sticks that you pick up on a hike. You need them to be at least 5 feet long when you get the stick, because then you're going to push it in the soil for about a foot, because that's how deep your box is, to get it to be really sturdy. And then you're going to be like carefully attaching the plant to it. So with the cucumber, you can have a stick, and then you might have a piece of string that you tied near the top and dangling down, because the cucumber might not grab hold to the stick as much, but it will to a string. And then but the stick is supporting it, because string needs to hang from someplace. You can also make a little frame. It depends on your space and depends on how many sticks you want your kids to pick up in the woods. And if you need any sticks or any bamboo stakes, you don't have to feel like you have to go out and buy them. Just please let Ted or me know, and we can provide them for you, because I have a bunch of bamboo stakes. And sometimes you might see tomato cages. They are okay, but they're costly. So that's one possibility. If you have an old tomato cage or know somebody who does, that's great. Okay. So for planting your cucumbers, like you did with the parsley that you got in a paper pot, if you receive a paper pot, then you're going to take off, like this is, you're going to take it off so that it's at the soil line or below. With cucumbers, you don't want to plant them deeply. You want to plant them at the same level that they were growing in. So, and you'll see, like on this Excelsior, that there's little bumps on the bottom. It might send out a few more roots down there, but you don't want to bury it at all. So very different than planting a tomato. And this one, I can see that there are roots up here. So there are roots here, so it's forming roots and the roots are going down. So that's a great sign. So, and this, you saw the pictures of the cucumbers in the ground, or you will be seeing those. And then this is still a baby cucumber. You're also going to receive bean seeds. And this is the kind of bean you get, Masai bean. They are going to be, it says very fine flavor is only one feature of this remarkable French bean. Uniform pods. They have abundant yields on tidy upright bush plants. It's suitable for raised beds, field grown, or containers on the balcony. So they are good for a small space, and you'll get lots of beans. Now, I just realized in the in-person sessions a couple of days ago that the garden boxes, even though they're described as 4 feet, really have the growing capacity of 3.5 feet. So given the boundaries of them, so you're getting 30 bean seeds, but you may not be able to plant. You're not going to plant 30 because that would take up the whole bed. But you might be able to plant like 6 bean seeds. Now, in the case, like it's harder to tell with lettuce. Like it's hard to count the lettuce and see. I think I planted a few lettuces, but you're not sure how many actually germinated. But with beans, you count the beans, and then you can say, oh, I planted 6 seeds and I only got 5 plants, or I got 4 plants. Then you could pop another one in. Beans are very fast germinating, and so that's why you have extra seeds. These are fresh seeds, so they should be very viable. And that means full of life to be able to grow. If you have, as you will probably have extras, those can be saved. Keep the little envelope in a dry place in your box. Make sure it doesn't get moisture. These can be saved for next year, so you'll have a head start. Beans like warm soil. That's why I waited to give them to you now, because it's now, after the nights we've had, it's going to be hard to tell. I think you can put safely this weekend, plant your beans in the soil, but they do like warmth. And as I described on the piece of the handout I gave you, or you were sent by email, that beans, they're the biggest seed that you've dealt with so far, and that you're going to plant them twice as deep as the size they are. So not super deep, but not right on the surface either. And make sure they're watered in well. You keep them moist, and then count the days, and then they'll be popping up probably within 5, at most 6 days after you plant them. So that's great. Okie dokes. Now back to the vertical planting. So the wanting to make sure that you have the supports that you need to support the plants, and that you will have to train the plants, and you will have to prune your tomatoes. So again, I'll show you the growth on the tomato that you're gonna pinch. So even when you're planting, like this is a gold nugget, even when you're planting it, you're gonna prune down all these lower branches, and you're gonna pinch out this growth right there. So you're gonna pinch it out, because then you would be growing. It's actually wanting to make a whole new plant, and tomatoes are just so amazing. But that whole new plant would not have time to grow into a fruit bearing, like a tomato bearing plant. So you just want to pinch it out so that it focuses all the energy of the plant on growing the fruit. So these are going to have blossoms soon, and so will the Matt's wild cherry. They're going to be blossoming soon, so that will be exciting. and then you'll begin in another month. You'll be seeing fruit growing, the tiny little cherry tomatoes. Okie doke. Now I want to ask you, do you have any questions? But you're not here with me, so you'll have to send your questions by email, and feel free to do that.